how important and we look to sort of encourage that. And I know Megan, Stephanie, Jeffrey all know Rosa. And so this is just sort of ad hoc. I mean, there's no big firm or anything like this here. There's no giant bank with big budgets or anything that dives in here. This is me and Stephanie and Jeffrey kind of putting this together, this little homespun thing. And for those of you that have causes and groups and things that you care about, like, we'd love to hear from you and put more things together. And in fact, Jeffrey has a specific little signature book where his goal is to meet every single person here tonight. And if he does that and gets a little of your initials from everybody, I'll buy him dinner. Yeah. So he'd love to hear from you, and he's smiling on the inside. So a little bit about Northwestern. So I'm a wealth management advisor and managing director. I run the Redwood Shores office. And also lead a wealth team here. We focus on insurance, investments, and fee-based planning. The most frequent way we bring on clients is a fee for financial advice. Flat fee, we bring on folks and work with them very collaboratively, usually about 4 to 6 meetings over the course of the year. So very just low-key kind of approach. We also, we're differentiated because we do things very comprehensively. So I'm a CFA charter holder, CFP, COU, which you know that one, and then recently a chartered alternative investment advisor. And we have multiple credentials on the team. So Stephanie's fully licensed, Jeffrey is a CFP candidate, etc. and things. And so our focus is working on risk insurance, tax avoidance, wills, trust, and estate planning, investments, putting that all together into a comprehensive strategy. But that's the day job. We have lots of other fun stuff that we do as well. Like put together things like this. We do a Blue Angels party where we open up the building and invite people over and watch the Blue Angels and have a ton of fun, and do a lot of stuff out in the community as well. So looking forward to getting to know you, and I'll give it back to Nina and go through it.
Thank you so much, Tim. I just got a message from someone who's on Zoom, because we're joining the virtual event. They said the host needs to let them in.
She's like that.
Yeah, okay.
Everyone's in.
Are you able to let them in?
Everyone's in.
Everyone's in? How many people have joined? So this is the first time we're actually doing, once before we did it, we forgot to record it. The second time we're doing like a hybrid event, and we have one woman joining us from Pakistan, Daniela, so it's pretty cool. Yeah, so it's because not everyone lives in the Bay Area, and people were very curious about the event. So yeah, as I said, I'm going to very quickly do a mini LinkedIn workshop, because I told you what my goal was. And so LinkedIn strategies for women leaders, but men, you can also follow those strategies. So my name is Naina Kapudi. I'm a LinkedIn coach and trainer. I'm also the founder of the Expat Woman, and last year, I tell the women in my network to toot their horn, so I'm tooting it too. I was listed as one of the 15 LinkedIn experts in San Francisco, recognized as one of them. So yeah, so thank you. So for me, it was just, I kind of got into LinkedIn by default because I moved to the US 21 years ago. I came here with almost zero network. I met my husband here, he's American. That's another story I'll save for another day. But he works in film, and I landed up living in San Francisco with a filmmaker who was barely home, and I had to find my own network. So it led me to first start the Expat Woman 10 years ago, because I realized that when you're new to a country, it's really hard to find that network. And in the US, a lot of it is who do you know, and how can they help you get a job. And I also use LinkedIn because I realized that I'm not going to be able to meet everyone because I didn't grow up here. I had a few classmates, so I started leveraging LinkedIn, and I grew my network, and I grew the Expat Woman very successfully. And I was able to host events at places like Google and GoPro and Yelp, because I was able to use LinkedIn to connect with people and showcase what the Expat Woman does, and try to bring like a diverse group of women together. Like Gladys, who's right here. Gladys, raise your hand. Gladys was someone who came to one of my events, like, I don't know how many years ago, Gladys, but I think it was through this whole community, and I want to continue to build that. And part of the focus is also spotlighting like our panelists today who are amazing, and so other women feel inspired. If they can be women leaders and be in the C-suite, so can we. So with that, let me move forward. So I just want to get, what is your current level of expertise on LinkedIn? Can I just see a show of hands? And this is no right or wrong. Okay, so how many of you would say you're a beginner? And it's fine if you're a beginner. Okay. Somewhat knowledgeable. I don't make use of it enough. Okay. And then expert, use it regularly. Okay, very cool. Okay, for those who know how to use it regularly, I'm sorry, I might be touching on some basic stuff, but yeah, I'll try and go through it as possible. So there is a gender, there's gender gap in tech, there's a gender pay gap, but there is a gender gap on LinkedIn. 63% of men call themselves thought leaders on LinkedIn, and only 37%. And so to me this was huge. When I was doing a search some while ago, I was like, wow, these are really bad statistics, and nothing against the men, because again, I think you have to showcase who you are, right? But for many of us, and I know statistics have shown that when women will not apply for a job unless their qualifications match 100% of the job details. And I think the same thing comes with really sharing your expertise on a platform like LinkedIn. And a lot of women in the C-suite, women leaders, I look at their profiles and it doesn't tell me much, because they've got all this amazing expertise, but it doesn't reflect in their profiles. Whereas again, I haven't looked at too many men's profiles, but I just see there's a bit of a gap, and we need to change that. 50% of LinkedIn users identify as men, and 43 identify as women. So again, you can see there's a gender gap. For every 10 C-suite executives on LinkedIn, only 2 to 3 are women. So that is, and who here is from Grant Thornton? Is anyone here from Grant? Yeah, because I saw some statistics. You all have done a lot of work on the gender gap in the C-suite. So I learned even more from looking at your your work and stuff. So LinkedIn is the only social network platform that boasts more men than women. Okay, so we have to change that. So as of now, this year LinkedIn reached 1 billion professionals, and only 3%, 3 to 5% are actually active on the platform. Almost everyone else is just using it, but not really sharing content, not really building their network effectively. The people are using it as what I call the pitch slap, right? You connect with someone, the next minute they're saying, can we get on the phone for 15 minutes? Can I sell you whatever, toilet paper? I have people trying to sell me LinkedIn training. I was like, did you even read my profile? So women in the we could really lead the way by breaking the gender gap on LinkedIn, so we start showing up regularly on the platform. So one of the tips I want to share with you today is be strategic when you use LinkedIn. Don't just, and I'm like that on Instagram. I don't really know how to use Instagram. I just slap something together and then I'm hoping it'll stick. So the same thing with LinkedIn, so this is what, when you start using LinkedIn, or even if you're, use it for a while, what do you want to be known for on LinkedIn? Who's your audience? Again, you don't want to connect with everyone, when like all of us get LinkedIn requests. I don't accept every request. If they're not my target audience, I ignore it, and it's not considered being rude. So again, focus on who you want to build your network with. Who am I trying to influence? Because when you start sharing contact, you want to think of the people you don't want to think about yourself, like what kind of value can I add that this person will benefit from my LinkedIn content? And then what do you want to do on LinkedIn? Do you want to use LinkedIn to build your network? Do you want it, to share content? Do you want to use LinkedIn to engage with people? So also think about what can I use LinkedIn for is really important. So again, you can use LinkedIn for all these different things. I'm not affiliated with LinkedIn in any way. They're not paying me to do this. It's just that I was able to build a successful business with LinkedIn without having any network. And during the pandemic, I kind of went by default, became a LinkedIn coach, because people started reaching out to me and saying, you've done all this on LinkedIn, can you teach us? So I just see the power in it. So there's 6 pillars. So it's not just about the profile. It's not just about the connections. It's not just about the engagement of the content. It's all these go hand in hand. So I'm again very quickly going to go through it. Your LinkedIn profile, if you Google your name, you will usually your LinkedIn profile shows up right at the top. And if your LinkedIn profile doesn't showcase who you are and what you do, people might move on. So it's really important it is your digital reputation. So again, it's a work in progress. Maybe your profile is not ready today, but keep working on it. Keep, fleshing it out. And you will get more views if your LinkedIn profile is complete. So these are some of the things you want to have on your profile. You want to have your banner, you want to have your profile photograph, you want to have your headline, if you have a website, and very important, especially for women who are from other countries and maybe our names are difficult to pronounce. You can record your name, the pronunciation of your name on your phone, on your app. If you go to your app, so download LinkedIn on your phone and then you can record your name. It's also useful for people who, like someone has a meeting with me, like, how do I pronounce the name? Is it Nina? Is it Naila? You listen to my name pronunciation, it says Naina Kaputi. So it's also helpful when you're connecting with someone and you want to be, my mind's not working right now, but you know what I mean. You don't want to mispronounce them, and I'm guilty of it. I mispronounce people's names all the time. So this is helpful. So I just wanted to share that with you. Connections. It's a 24/7 virtual networking platform, and there are no gatekeepers. You want to connect with Chris, you don't have to go through Stephanie or Jeffrey, right? You can just go direct. So that's what I love about it. I mean, I've connected with all the amazing women today. Adanta, Swati, Saba, Megan, I all connected them on LinkedIn. I'm meeting all of them for the first time today. That's how I found many of my panelists. I would do a search for a specific title, like I wanted CEOs, and then I find them and I look at their profile. So all of you passed the profile test. so that's another thing. Yeah. How many of you have used the LinkedIn QR code to connect with people? Okay, almost all of you. So I'm just going to so for those of you those of you who know how to use the QR code, you can connect with people at the end of this event, because I want you all leaving with at least 2 or 3 connections, and you can use your QR code to connect. So someone who doesn't know how to use a QR code, the person who knows how to use it will show you how to do it. But it's really simple, but you need to download your app on your phone. I don't use business cards anymore. I just connect with people on LinkedIn, because the business cards would just land in my bag or whatever. So so I'm not going to go through this. This is really, we had about 135 people register on the LinkedIn event page. Again, people like the sound of the event, but I've hosted over 400 events at this point, and I know that many people register, but they may not necessarily sign up on the event page. But these are people who are interested in, how many did we say here? Yeah, these are people who are interested in, I think we were at 127, I think we're closer to 150. Who are interested in the topic of women in the C-suite, women leaders. Maybe they're interested in learning more about Northwestern Mutual. So one tip I want to share with you, you can connect with people today, but you can also go to the event page on LinkedIn, and if you click on networking, it gives you all the connection of all the people who signed up. You can check their profiles. I don't want anyone spamming everyone, but if you see a profile and like, wow, I'd really like to know this person, you don't have to be connected with them. You can send them a message and say, hey, I saw you registered on the LinkedIn event page for women in the C-suite. Would you like to connect with me? Or, so I love the strategy, because otherwise, especially if you don't have premium, it's very hard for you to really find people and connect with like-minded people. So that's a tip. Conversations. You want to connect with people and engage with them on LinkedIn. Again, another tip, because we're talking about LinkedIn event pages, creating a conversation, and you can see, you can introduce yourself in the comments. And Sasha, I think I shared, yes, you see, you're up here, because she said how she's looking forward to the event. She shared on the comments how she's looking forward to the event. So, you can also engage on the comments of the event page. And when you do that, you're also showcasing you can share something about yourself, you can showcase your expertise. It's all about putting yourself out there on LinkedIn. And I've trained over 1,000 women at this time on how to use LinkedIn. And the reason I use LinkedIn, because my goal is really to help women to showcase their expertise and stand out and be in the spotlight. And so this is such a great platform to do that. Content. When you start thinking of content, don't think about yourself, think about your audience. You don't want to be all over the place. The beauty of LinkedIn now is it's become less in the old days. And Chris, you are in a suit, but don't see this as don't be offended. But they used to say LinkedIn's for dudes in suits when it was first, when it first came up. It has changed. So LinkedIn's become more about, really showcasing your personality, who you are, again, it's about being authentic. Because many women that I work with are scared to put themselves out on LinkedIn because they're afraid of being judged, about not sounding professional enough. LinkedIn has changed. You can be who you are. I see people when they get laid off from a job, they post about being laid off, and then so many people reach out to help them. Someone's trying to grow their business. I've even seen people share about their divorce and stuff. Again, it's not like Facebook and stuff, but it's really showing I'm a person. I'm not just a professional. This is who I am, and people buy from people. So it's really important to humanize your content, especially now with AI. Everyone's using, not everyone, but I can tell when someone uses ChatGPT, it's just so obvious that a robot or AI has written that. You can use ChatGPT, but then humanize it, change it and use your language. So and that's why, you want to be authentic. And yeah. So one of my tips for today is you could take a photograph during the panel discussion, you could take a photograph at the end, and then you can share it on LinkedIn and talk about, maybe share a key takeaway, so you're showcasing and you can take a photograph even during this LinkedIn presentation. Tag me, tag our panelists, tag Chris, tag Stephanie, tag people you meet, because it's about saying, hey, I went to this event and this is what I learned, and these are the people I met. It encourages other people to put themselves out there, because maybe there are people who want to see and learn about this and hear about what you did. It also shows that you're not just, you don't just go home, but you also go to these professional events. So that's a tip, that if you're thinking about what content to create. This one's called creator mode. So another thing I tell the women I work with, don't wait to be invited to have a seat at the table. You can build your own table. Don't wait to be invited to speak at an event. Don't wait to be invited to be a guest on a podcast, or to, someone invites you to write your own blog post. You can actually, with LinkedIn, host your own events, be a speaker. So with creative mode, you can do something called LinkedIn Lives, which are like Zoom, but it goes live on LinkedIn. You can do LinkedIn audio events. You can create your own newsletter. So you can showcase your expertise. You just need to know 10% more than the rest of the audience. If you decide, I'm going to talk about, say, product management, you just need to know 10% more than everyone else about product management and start talking about it and sharing it. So I have a show called the Expat Woman Show. Actually, I did this 2 days ago with Camilla. She's in Spain, but I host this every week. So I'm not waiting for someone to invite me to be on their show. I want to spotlight other women, and I want to showcase my expertise. So my interviews, I talk about what I do, but I also highlight the women I work with. You can do LinkedIn audios. This is like Clubhouse. How many of you know ever on Clubhouse? So LinkedIn audio is just audio, and I love it because you don't need to have makeup on and your hair. You just turn on the audio. You just go into the LinkedIn audio event, and it's just voice. And it's if you told me like a few years ago, Naina, you'll be doing these live events, you'll be on shows, you'll be speaking in front of crowds, and I said, no way. I was always behind the scenes. I was like, I have had major imposter syndrome. It's taken me a while. The pandemic pushed me out of my comfort zone, and all I can say, it gets easier. Putting yourself out on LinkedIn, being on audio events, speaking, it just gets easier. You just have to do it. And sometimes my mind goes blank and I just own it. I'm like, sorry. Or, I forget how to pronounce a word, or I stammer, and people forgive you. So just, yeah. And so I have a LinkedIn newsletter where I share tips, so you can even start, curating. You don't even have to create your own content. You can go on LinkedIn and find content that other people have written and put in a newsletter. So if even one person can benefit from the expertise and leadership that you have to share, it's so worth it. You're doing a disservice by not putting yourself out there on LinkedIn. A disservice to yourself and a disservice to people who can benefit from you. So people say it's not my priority right now. I don't have the time. You can just use it for 9 minutes daily to showcase your thought leadership, grow your network, and you can, leave comments on 2 posts. I'm going to post this event on LinkedIn. I don't know if I'm connected with everyone, but if you go to Naina Kapudi, you can leave a comment. So, you can post your own, you can post your post and tag me and I can comment about it. I tell people to try and connect with a few people every week. I think LinkedIn gives you up to 100 connections. Again, we don't have the time to send 100, and you don't want to spam everyone, but start building your network effectively. Maybe you can send a text or voice message. On LinkedIn, you can do video and audio messages as well. So you've met someone, and you want, instead of sending a text, you can record it and send it directly on LinkedIn messages. You can check your LinkedIn message board and respond to 2 messages. These are just tips on how to use LinkedIn in 9 minutes. So again, to recap, be strategic, complete and optimize your profile, create content to show your expertise and leadership, build your network and nurture it. And if you're too busy right now, spend 9 minutes today to stay active and engaged. So again, this is me, Naina Kaputi. Just very quickly, I'm hosting the Expat Woman Virtual Summit. These are, I think we have, Daniela is joining me from Pakistan. I don't know who else. So one of our speakers is actually on Zoom from Pakistan. But I host this 1 to 2 times a year. I don't know, everyone in this room may not be an expat, but but I invite everyone because this one is focused on inspiring inclusion, community belonging, and empowerment. So even if you're not a foreign-born woman, you are working with people who are immigrants or children of immigrants. And I think, we're talking more about cultural intelligence and cultural empathy and, being able to learning how to work with diverse women, or even if your company has people abroad or your clients are from other countries. So these panelists are going to be talking about different topics around community belonging, which should be valuable. It's free. And this is the link, the expatwoman.com/summit. The waitlist is right now open. But if you sign up for the waitlist, when we open it, you can get a free ticket. And it's 3 days, and then it'll be recorded, so you can even watch the recordings. But we have women from different countries across the world. Yeah, this is the speakers again. And then I have another event coming up, Get Hired. This is an event for people who are looking for career transitions. It's next month at CloudFest San Francisco. So I haven't yet put the link on how you can sign up, but I'll send an email to everyone in case you're interested in attending. And with that, let's have our panelists up here. I'll sit here since there's no place. Maybe I'll sit here and moderate the panel from here. Maybe I'll start by they didn't have another high chair. That's fine. I can sit. It's very conversational. Okay. Are you guys
the chairs around here?
I'll stand for now, then I'll sit. Yeah. Okay. So I'll start by having each of you introduce yourself briefly, what you do, and how you got to where you are today. You're all women in the C-suite. So first of all, let's give them a round of applause. I mean, they've all been so hard. I also want to say I appreciate you all making the time. I know you have really busy schedules. I went through a big list of women in the C-suite. A lot of them are busy. Some didn't respond. All these women have responded. Megan was on the guest list. I said, "Hey, Megan, do you want to be on the panel?" And she said yes. And then Adanta introduced me to Swati. So it's all amazing how community works. So yeah, let's have you maybe start with Adanta, and then we'll go down the line.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I feel like on Zoom normally.
Introduce yourself. Introduce yourself, where you work, and also you're a second generation immigrant, so maybe a little bit about that as well. And how did you get to where you are today?
Okay, great. So my name is Adanta Hanu, pronounced she, her. I'm the Chief Program Officer at Co-op Careers. So we're a national workforce development nonprofit that works with recent first-generation and low-income college graduates and puts them in a 4-month program at no cost to help them get jobs in tech and in media. As you were saying, so I grew up in Arizona, but my parents are actually from East and West Africa. So my mom is from Uganda, my dad's from Nigeria, and for different reasons, they both ended up in the States, and that's where they had me and my 3 younger siblings. So to the question of how I got to where I am today, something I often share is, I think being the oldest, leading people at a young age was always in my blood. My parents were often working. They owned a small family business, and so I always loved kind of guiding and mentoring my siblings, inspiring them to create dance routines with me, even if they didn't want to. And so I think that kind of thread continued throughout my career of just really enjoying the ability to help inspire others towards a shared vision. So I know through the other questions, I'll kind of talk more about that, but for now, I'll leave it there.
Great. Well, thank you, Adansa, for introducing me, Tina, and being here. So my name is Swati. I am the COO, CFO of Rune Labs. We are a Series A digital health startup focused in precision neurology. And our first use case is in Parkinson's. We actually have an application on the Apple Watch, which is why I'm wearing this, that tracks tremor and dyskinesia, and it's FDA cleared. And so we use that data to help influence and impact clinical decisions between doctor and patient. How I got here, so I have an engineering undergrad, and I distinctly remember this moment when we were doing our capstone project as a group, and I wanted to do everything but design the project, right? I wanted to like program manage the project, I wanted to write up the report, and I think as I look back, like that was the first sign of, you know what, like I like technology, but I wanted, be a leader in that, and then what that path looked like we'll talk about it in the questions, was like, definitely was not linear. And then I think I made it known, I would say, along the way, about what I wanted to do. And so, I call it like the success story, but I had this great manager, boss, who was the COO of my previous startup. And I made it known to him that I would like to be a COO. And he introduced me to the CEO of my current company when they were looking for a COO. So I think, building good relationships, everyone talks about finding the sponsor, and I feel like I found a sponsor, but more importantly, I found a friend who gave me the opportunities to set me up to be, for him to be my sponsor, if that makes sense. And so, and then I think similar to you, I'm a first generation American. My parents are both from India. I have a younger brother. We grew up in Petaluma, so not far from here. And I think there's just this like resilience story that exists with immigrants, like your parents come here, they've left their life for, a better life for them and for you. And so you just like, and then I'm the older sibling. And so I think just this like, sort of seeing what they, left and wanted to build here, and like continuing that legacy, I think also does help propel some of the success.
Amazing. My name's Megan Thor, and I am the Chief Operating Officer of Ignite GTM. I'm also our portfolio manager for our fund of funds. Where do I start with all the things so I'm very entrepreneurial. I started a healthcare technology company about 3 years ago, started my own consulting practice later last year, and then that's sort of how I came into the Ignite GTM. We're at the center of a triangle between VCs, LPs, which are limited partners, and startups. So we sort of help be able to coach through fractional COO services, which is my part of the business. And then we also, connect LPs to GPs through their VCs through our fund of funds. Let's see how I got here. Well, I'm originally from Ohio, so so my story is a little bit different, but I would say that resiliency is definitely part of my story. Like, I did not grow up with a lot of money, and I saw how hard my parents worked. My parents worked 2 jobs and always sort of taught me the, just getting your hands dirty and like getting it done. So I think growing up, and I've always had multiple jobs through high school, through college. So willing to do that grunt work to get where I wanted to go. And I read this book called Unapologetically Ambitious, and
So good.
It's
on the nightstand.
so good. I've cried, I've laughed, I've done all the things with this book. And I think part of why this book was so amazing is because I read it at a really important time of my life where I was sort of transitioning career-wise from the startup to God only knows what. And for me to be able to like understand that you need to vocalize what you want, sort of like changed the game for me. It was no longer just being agreeable in order to like get to that next spot, instead of just saying out loud, like, this is what I wanted to do. And last year I said I wanted to be a GP of a VC fund, and before I was 40. I am 34, I will be 34 this year. And so like just sort of putting your eye on the prize and just networking the hell out of it. And anyway, I'll probably get more into that, but I think it's just stating what you want, not what everybody else wants. And then just going for it with, being unapologetically ambitious. So.
Right, so I'm Sabah Ahmed and I am the co-founder and COO of Infoglen Technologies. Infoglen is a Salesforce implementation partner. We just this year became, in fact last year, became Salesforce's gold partner. And how I got here, believe it or not, I started this company with my husband, who is right here. He's the CEO of the organization. And so we had this passion for Salesforce. We were both, before starting this, we were both working at Google. And we wanted to do more with Salesforce, and we wanted to see where that would take us. And we are both first generation immigrants. So, we wanted that American dream and to see whether it was possible. So we decided to quit our jobs and give it a shot. And I told some of my colleagues that, they said, what are you going to do? And I said, believe it or not, I'm going to start a company with my husband. And if I am not back asking for a job in 6 months, you will know that it's successful. So it's been 8 years now, and we are about 150 people team, global team, 20% in US, and we have a big offshore center in India. And we have Katie here, who is our finance manager and operations manager. She's been with us for 6 years, and thank you for your support. Being here today.
Those are all 4 stories, and how you got here, very powerful, very different, and yet so inspiring. And I think everyone listening in the audience, I'm sure you can make it happen, right? You have to step out of your comfort zone, or you have to manifest it. You cannot manifest it like you want it to be, right? Right? But you just have to take that plunge, and you can make it happen. So thank you. So my next, and I'm going to go on this side for a bit. Okay, so my next question is, what is one thing you had, someone had told you, you wish someone had told you when you started your journey, either the C-suite journey, or even when you just started your career? We all wish we had known something. All of us make so many mistakes before not all of us, at least I have. So yeah, maybe you want to just go with Sabah this time, we go this way? Yeah.
So I would say about our entrepreneurial journey, one thing that I wish somebody had told. So both Harun and I came from a technology background, and we were going into building Salesforce consulting company. We were very focused on the services that we were going to provide, the quality of work, the resources that we're going to hire and to start with. We did not give as much thought on a go-to-market strategy. We did not think about how to sell our services and to invest in hiring the right salespeople and to learn ourselves. And so that is something that I feel we should have done much earlier than when we started. I think we should have focused a lot on that before building just our product or services. So I think that's one thing that I wish I had known. And anybody starting, I think the first thing that we should always think about is, what is your go-to-market strategy, and how are you going to market your services? How are you going to sell, and who you need to bring onto your team to make that your product or service known to everybody.
Very valuable. Thank you.
If anybody needs that help, Ignite GTM.
Is that right? They're sitting next to each other.
No. Yeah, so I think one thing that I wish somebody would have told me is that your career path is not linear, and it's not figuring out what the next step is just like when you come out of college. It's constant, and I think you don't have to do one thing at a time. And growing up in the Midwest, it was sort of like, do this thing and stay on this path, and I'm like so not in the box. So like for me, it's like really frustrating. And so I would do a lot of like extracurricular, play women's soccer and do all this stuff. And it's like, if I could hone in all that extra energy to these other activities. And what I found to be like electrifying about being in Silicon Valley is that like no one just does one thing. Everyone's doing like 4 things, and like the level of brilliance and energy in this place is like, there's nowhere else like it. And so just to be able to not only do all these things, but when you can like weave these things to be complementary to all the other things, like when you enjoy mentoring and you enjoy venture capital and you enjoy this, it's like, could you find a way to mentor people who want to get into venture capital to do this thing and then like network with these other people? And then when you can bring that full circle, then you're never asking for anything. You're just sort of naturally like creating these like really good relationships where it's just like, you know, organic give and take. So I think that's what I wish is that like just the basic conceptual understanding that like you can do a lot of things, but try to place your bets into the race that are sort of going in similar directions, because everything you're sort of building over time, and when one thing comes to like full resolution, like this other thing just starts coming. So you never have to feel like you're starting from scratch with anything.
Do what works best, right? What you like doing and what works well, right?
Yeah, and don't
focus
let
on that.
anyone limit you to
Right.
just like doing this one thing. If you
Right.
feel like a lot of people who are in corporate roles who I've talked to are just like, I don't know what's next. And like
Right.
when you get paid well and then you don't have to leave,
Right.
it's usually when you get cut from that job that you feel like it's this like fight or flight mode. And it's like if you could find a way of like doing that while also doing other things at the same time, you like sort of allow yourself to explore other areas and not feel like you're pinned up against a wall.
That's really smart, yeah. Like don't, especially the pandemic, I think so many of us learned, right? Because many of us put our eggs in one basket and then yeah, so thanks for that tip. Swati?
Okay, I have two. I'll make them short.
Cheating. Kidding.
I think the first one is, I wish someone had told me the playing field is not equal for women. And you touched upon this already, but I feel like I only recently really appreciated what that actually means, you know, because it got couched under like imposter syndrome and like, you know, women being told they're too aggressive. And it just turns out that like, we're just judged differently for the same things. And so I wish someone had told me that so I wouldn't have like doubted myself so much throughout this journey. And then I think the second one would be lean into the awkwardness. God, the amount of like hard conversations I have to have on a daily basis are like numerous. And I am definitely like, I was growing up, I was very quiet, I get nervous about lots of things. And I think I always thought it was just me. And then I realized, you know, like as you sort of develop and grow and, you know, sort of advance and experience, right? That like, there's all these things around crucial conversations and you just realize as you become more senior, like so much more of my job is to have these awkward conversations to push things along than to say yes. And so I'm coaching myself to lean into the awkwardness and like, you know, not get so nervous about it and like push myself to make sure I'm having those awkward conversations, but otherwise I'm not moving the company forward.
So I think for me, one thing I didn't share at the beginning, but you know, to the question of like how I got to where I am, I think in terms of mindset, I've always had a growth mindset and had a huge commitment to ongoing learning. So I've always seen myself like every single stage of my career, I'm like, I have so much more to learn. I'm excited, like even in this space, I'm like learning from each of you in this moment. And alternatively, what that also meant was like, I have often been an overachiever in ways that have not been sustainable. And so what I actually wish I had learned earlier was this idea of like protecting my yeses and owning my nos. Because for so long, I was like, well, I have to have a growth mindset. So I had to say yes to everything to like get ahead. And so I'd be like, yes. And what that meant was, while there are certain things that I do think were valuable that I said yes to that have absolutely gotten me to where I am today, I think there's a number of things that I said yes to that weren't the best use of my time and that led to like evenings of like tears, right? Just like being real, or like evenings where me not feeling good enough, or evenings where I had stretched myself so much and everyone else is able to do what they want to do, but I'm feeling really burnt out. And so while I feel like I'm still learning that, how to like protect my yeses, right? I think it became more clear when I came into this C-suite role, and I still wanted to do all the things I was doing before. I still wanted to like, mentor all the people, and so I had these like 11 one-to-one meetings with non-direct reports that were recurring. And my CEO was like, I need you not to be in those meetings. And I was like, but I have to. And he's like, but you don't. Like, you're gonna have to be a different type of leader now. It's gonna feel uncomfortable. And you're going to need to own your no's at times. If someone needs your time and you're not available, that does not mean you're going to extend yourself another hour. You're going to say, I don't have the time right now, and it's going to be okay. And so I think that's something I do wish I had learned earlier in my career to help me feel even more sustainable in the role I'm in now.
I'm glad you brought up that saying learning to say no. It's really hard, and I think for women it's even harder, right? We just feel we have to give and we have to give all the time. So I think figuring out when to say yes and when to say no. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, and thank you also for sharing. But leaning into the awkwardness, right? Because you have to just own it and do what you're supposed to do. So for those, since this is also the Expat Woman event. For those of you who are, I know you're like me, a first generation immigrant, you guys are children of immigrants, you moved from Ohio to the European, right? It's like being an immigrant, right? So how has your like culture and, maybe growing up, a family that had different values or, not different values, but, I was talking more, not values, but, maybe a different kind of culture, and then you're here in the Bay Area or you're here in the US, like how is it played a role in who you are today as a leader? Anyone can go, whoever wants to.
I'll start. I think it's very important to always understand from where a person comes from, and our personality is a lot to do with the culture that we belong to. So I'm also from India. I grew up in India, and apart from that, I also lived in a lot of. So I was expat as a child, and then expat as a woman. So I lived in multiple countries in Africa. I actually lived in Nigeria too, and I've lived in many countries in Asia. So I feel that all those experiences that I had definitely helped me in becoming who I am. Coming from India in Saudi, I would know that from her parents' experience. It's a huge country, a huge population. So we have to have a emphasis on education, hard work ethics. We have to do, for one single position, there are hundreds of people available. For your admission to a college, you have to compete really. So you have to be very, very resilient about and know what you want. You have to define your goals well in advance, and you have to go after them. So that is something that I brought along me, that culture, and relationships are very important back in India. So all of that helped me into becoming who I am, being more able to adapt very well, able to, because I've lived in so many countries, I was able to get that cultural intelligence and cultural empathy about relating to people that are different from me. I've lived in places where I am a majority, I've lived in places where I am a minority, and the first time I went to school in Nairobi, I was the only one who was of a different color, and it was a very different experience for me, knowing that everybody was looking at me with suspicion because I was different. And so knowing all of that and learning that helped me understanding how to relate with people, how to, especially now when we work in this corporate landscape of globalized world, which is very diverse. People are, especially after pandemic, everybody's everywhere, and so I'm able to build those global teams better, have better empathy, and able to work under situations where they are restrained, restrained resources, because you have to make it work wherever. If you are living in places where you are not familiar with, you learn to be resourceful. You learn to be able to work something out, be creative. So I think that all influenced me into becoming who I am today. And it's still a journey. I'm not done. So obviously, still learning from all the experiences, and meeting people is something that I love. So, I feel that culture is all around.
Okay, cool. We have another of our speakers, Solvega, joining us from, she's in the US. Okay, cool. Okay, so thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else want to jump in? How is culture or
I can talk about it from the opposite like perspective. I like coming from Ohio, like it's predominantly like everyone's like the same, but I would say that also like from a negative perspective, it's so easy to be stagnant. And so there's like these boxes, and I felt like I was criminal justice major, actually was my undergraduate degree. So I've always been like a justice fighter, and I've always been like, this is not the right thing. Like, I'm not just gonna like just stand for this, because I always knew that I deserved more and that I wanted to push, and there's that like fire in your belly type of thing. And so I think coming out to Silicon Valley 5 years ago, it was such a relief to just be surrounded by so many more cultures and people's perspectives, and just an opportunity to learn. And every one of my family who still lives in Ohio asked me why I still live here, and I'm like, well, I would turn every penny, okay? But I see my family, and I love them so much. But I think part of that is like my fuel to kind of see how they are, and that fuel to like continue to keep going and keep moving, because it's like I don't want to be stagnant. I want to keep growing. And so being able to have those two perspectives is like part of that, like, okay, like I appreciate this world and I like don't want to let it go kind of thing,
Cool. Thank you for sharing that perspective. That is really interesting, and that is so important that you surround yourself with diversity, right? It just broadens your horizons, because even in India, it's not very diverse. We're very few non-Indians in India, right? I learned so much more about the different countries and cultures after I moved to the US. And I mean, the Bay Area is such an amazing melting pot of cultures. It's amazing, wonderful. So, yeah, you ladies want to go?
I think maybe one thing I'll add is like when I grew up, it wasn't as diverse as it is now. It was definitely diverse, but not
You're in the
as
Bay Area.
diverse.
Oh yeah, you said that.
Yeah, but still not as diverse. And so I definitely like stood out, as like a non-white person in my school, in my hometown. And I think as a result, I have this desire, like, every sort of personality test or business oriented, like professional oriented personality test I take, relationship are my superpower, let's call it. And I think it stems from wanting to make sure that people are, feeling like they're included and part of something. But I fundamentally believe that that is like the number one thing that drives everything, including like hardcore business results. And so I do feel like that has like prompted me to want to make sure that people are feeling part of the process and included, and that they have some sort of say in what's happening, right? Even if they're not like the final decision maker.
I love that. And I think that's why it's so important for companies to have employee resource groups too, because I think very often, just like in school, you felt like you were not included. And I think the same thing with companies, because they might hire diverse staff, but then they don't. I've heard from some of my Expat Women networks that when they join the company, they don't feel like they belong, because maybe there's pop culture references. Like I've experienced that too. People talk about some TV shows that they watch growing up here, and I have no idea what they're talking about. Yeah, and it doesn't have any charm or for me, because I didn't. Yeah, so it's even simple things like that. Even food. When I moved to the US, root beer, I just couldn't understand why people like root beer. I thought this tastes like medicine. It was just something but I got used to it. Or even a Thanksgiving meal, because in India our food is so spicy, and my husband's American, and the first Thanksgiving I thought I'd cry, because I was like, is this what I have to look forward to? Like this is so bland. So now I love the Thanksgiving meal, but it's really it's just like it's just so interesting, how cultures and what one person enjoys, you might not, but you're exposed to it, and then you understand, and then of course it makes you more empathetic. So yeah. And Adanta, do you want to share?
Yeah, I think, and you, Swati, said some of the things I was going to mention actually. So I think the two things that come to mind for me are people dynamics, and I just lost the other one. So mentorship. Those are the two. So if I forget, those are the two. It's like end of day. So I think for people dynamics, it goes back to what you were sharing as well. So similarly, I grew up in an environment that did not look very much like me, specifically in Arizona. And so I felt at a very young age what it felt like to not be included, or for people to be touching our hair and wondering why are your braids like this and why do you look like this and da. And so at a very young age, I think I developed this like eagerness to want to make sure people felt included. And so anytime, you know, when I was younger, there was a new kid in school, I was like, I want to take them around. I was that kid, because I wanted to make sure that people felt like included. And what that then also meant was over time throughout my life, I've been in different spaces with people who have very different life experiences than I have. And so often when people ask, like, how did you get to where you are? What's a piece of advice? I actually often talk about people dynamics in the workplace. And if you can like understand how to work with people who have different working styles, different personalities than you, like how valuable that skill is. And often that's the barrier. It's like we both are trying to do the same thing, but you're trying to do it a very different way than I am, and I'm pissed, right? But like you can learn how to do that. I do feel like that kind of cultural empathy and moving through in that way that I learned about like just growing up in different cultures, hearing my parents say the word salmon and then going to school and saying, oh, I had salmon last night. And they're like, people are like, huh? And they're like, it's salmon. I'm like, why is that, right? But like those moments and then like having empathy. And so that's like one thing I think is like building the ability around people dynamics. And the other around mentorship, I am the oldest of my siblings. As I said, my parents are both immigrants to the States. And so even when I was applying to college, like that whole experience was very foreign to them. And to this day, like there are specific mentors in my life. I can like picture like snapshots of my life, but because of those mentors, either sharing information with my parents or sharing information with me, those are pivotal moments that have gotten me to where I am today. And so because of that and seeing how people make time for me and my family, I then feel like this commitment to want to do the same and like lift while I climb. I think that is very much connected to why I do what I do at the organization I'm at is, right, we're focused on supporting recent first-gen low-income graduates achieve their full potential. I think that has really shifted when I first started in the exciting field of insurance. That was where my career started. And then I'm like, hey, I'm like right at home. But I've now shifted. That shift was like, you know, my heart was like wanting to give back in the ways that like so many people poured into me to help me get to where I am today.
Can I say that we no longer have Thanksgiving food on Thanksgiving, we actually have Indian food.
You know, then a very quick story on that. So my husband and his brother both Italian American, so they like a lot of garlic. So the next day they told me to cook something Indian, but his grandmother, who's actually from Italy, but she really tried to fit into the American culture. So she changed her name. She tried to, you know, not be very Italian. She was so upset that I made Indian food. She said, you're breaking the tradition. And they looked online and they found that Thanksgiving food wasn't even turkey, it was venison and stuff that's not related. Yeah. So yeah, but just funny because she was, you know, a daughter of immigrants, but she came at a time when, you know, being Italian was looked down upon and you had to be American. So it's just, yeah, but that's cool that you do the Indian food. I love it.
Like anything but Thanksgiving food. So we switch it up every year with like a different cultural meal.
My favorite meal.
Okay.
Yeah, I do like it now.
Yeah, my sister-in-law gets real mad at us. She's like, I came for Thanksgiving meal. I'm like,
That's so funny. All right, so my next question, you know, all of you have accomplished a lot, and I want everyone to leave tonight feeling very inspired by all that you've done, but maybe there's one accomplishment that stands out in your mind as something you're really proud of. Now is the time. Don't feel you're not bragging, you're not showing off. This is, you know, owning something that you did. And again, anyone who wants to start can go. Is there one accomplishment as a woman leader, as a woman in the C-suite that you've achieved that you'd like to share? And maybe also sharing what was the challenge that you faced before you achieved that accomplishment, and is there like some kind of takeaway from it, you know? And I'm making it a little complicated. You don't have to do the second part, but at least the first part.
Okay. Well, I'm happy. I'll sit up here and talk about it. So I think last year when I was transitioning from being a healthcare technology founder to figuring out what was next, I applied for countless corporate jobs. I sort of try to keep figuring out how to make myself fit in this box, and went through many interviews and many rejections and many no hearbacks. And I think for me, like, I spent months doing this, and I finally got to a point where I think I mentioned this to somebody earlier today too, like I was on a bike ride with some of my friends and I finally was at this place where I like allowed myself to like feel ease about like what I was gonna do. Like I was so sick of like allowing the control to be in somebody else's hands. And I thought like, when am I ever gonna take control of like what my destiny and future is going to be, right? Like instead of this corporate fallacy of like, feel like I need to depend on someone to make money. It's like my whole life, like I've created my own revenue streams, like why? And so it sort of like was like, as soon as I got home that day, I swear to you, like I was like, great, I'm gonna start like thinking of names for my consulting company. And so like from that point on, I have like, that is the greatest thing that I've done in my life is figured out like, I'm gonna start my own business, but it's not gonna be something that like I have to learn like something new or create this product, or it was just me, right? Like I am this product. And that was so I do fractional COO services, and I met with hundreds of people last year just talking and networking and asking questions, and I think that helped shape exactly like what direction I wanted to go in. And I still like talk to many women in industries that I'm interested about. I ask for 15 minutes and they give it to me. I am that person on LinkedIn. I'm like, hey, would you talk to me for 15 minutes? I don't want to tell you anything, but I also just like think you're amazing. And I promise it'll only be 15 minutes. And I send them 15 minutes and usually goes longer. Yeah, so I think that my greatest accomplishment is when I really believed in myself and I went out there on a limb and I said like, this is what I'm gonna do. And I told my wife that like, this is like, I'm investing in myself for the future, and whether or not I do consulting for the rest of my life or not, like this will always be mine. And I think that was like that freeing moment of like, great, like this is my destiny, and highly encourage everyone who wants to go down this path. I'm happy to talk to you, but yeah, that was like my favorite thing that I've like done for myself.
Fantastic, thank you, thanks for sharing.
I can go next. So I think I'll talk about two things. One is something that I'm really very proud of, and I don't talk about it often, but it's how I reinvented my career. So I took a break, a career hiatus when I had my kids, and I wanted to give them, especially coming from a different culture, I wanted to make sure that they knew our culture, they knew our language, and so I took time off and I raised them, and I had wonderful time just being the mom and nothing else. But I've always had this thing in me that I want to make sure that I have a career, and I wanted to make an impact. So just going after, I tried so many different things, like this is not going to work and that is not going to work, until everybody, when you talk up to them, is if you are from India, are you in IT? Are you an engineer? That's the one thing people. So I said that okay, I am going to do this. My background is in business, but said I'm going to dive into it and I'm going to learn it. And I had a wonderful, supportive husband who kept on encouraging that yes, you can do it, try it. And then I just decided that I am going to get certified as a Salesforce admin to start with, and went after it, did all the exercises and everything that was needed, and then went and I kept telling my husband that I need more projects, give me projects before I take the exams, give me things. So kept on pushing with persevering to just make sure that it happens. And I remember the day I got certified and I said that, okay, now I can be the IT person. I was super excited and then went into and made that a career. So that was my most, I think something that I'm really very proud of. And I feel that if I could do it, anybody can do it. It's just, setting your goal and making sure that you are going after it. And something that I found is that giving yourself a timeline that it should happen by this time makes you, otherwise you're all over and you don't know when you're going to get there. The other thing that, and so what that encouraged me to do, which we do a lot in our organization, we have done it, is started a initiative where we do encourage people and moms who are trying to come back after that hiatus and reskill them and give them a platform to learn. And we have a few leaders now that came through that route. So I'm very proud of something that we have done for our organization. The other thing that I want to talk about is again, where going after something and which looks unbelievable and not doable. So when we started, so Salesforce has a partner program, and it's a tiered program. So you start as a registered partner, then a silver, and then a gold partner. So when we became silver partner, first registered and then silver, they have a points program. It's very, very complicated, very difficult. We were silver partner, and everybody was asking like, okay, when are we going to become gold partner? And after all my calculations, I thought that this is impossible. It's not going to happen. It'll take a lot for us to get there. Until one day I just went into doing a lot of calculations of how we can do it, and then I said that, you know what, I am going to do it, and we am going to work with everybody who is going to support me in this. So I went and talked to everyone, and I said, I need this from you, I need this from you, and if we do this, we would get to gold partnership at the end of this time. It was still not, it was out there, but we were able to. We kept on pushing, and we were able to do it. And it was one of my proudest moments to know that something that we started from one room in our house is now a Salesforce Gold partner. So it was again going after your dreams, setting your goals, and making sure and not stopping. Like if one path is not, if that door doesn't lead to where you want to go, you need to change your path and open another door and another door until you are able to get to where you want to be. So. Yeah, it's so, and if you hear them talk, it is just amazing, like how they feel about, especially, when you have a 50% population that is, especially in India, there's a lot of emphasis on women taking care of their kids. And so you are like sometimes even forced to give up your career and go, and then it's a highly trained demographic that is not doing anything. And if you just give them opportunity, they're so ever so grateful about just having that opportunity. And I did it myself, so I knew that this is possible. You can reboot your career, you can reskill yourself, and you just need that environment or a platform where you can prove that, okay, from after a training, this is how I will work on a project. So we have a internal business systems team where we have these people work and until they're able to join a customer project.
So impressive. Yeah, thank you for doing that. Yeah. And the common thread I saw, with both of you is like having a vision and focus, and again resilience, because as you just nothing's ever easy, right? You may have these grandiose dreams and it never happens, but some people just give up. But I think you just if you have, and that's why I think having a goal, and you said timeline, I think timeline is very important too. I mean, it puts a little pressure on yourself, but if the timeline, you don't meet the timeline, it can extend it. But I think it's good to have that timeline. Yeah, thank you.
And somebody told me, which was also something that I think that we should do. If you have a goal, that tell somebody that you're afraid to lose in front of, right? So a competitor, a boss, or someone else. Okay, I'm going to do this by this date, and then you're like you have to do it because you've told this.
That's that's a very valuable tip. Having an accountability partner, or putting it out there, because people will hold you accountable. So not just having it in your head. So thank you. Yeah. Danta and Swati, do you want to share an accomplishment?
Yeah, I can go next. So the compliment I'll say is one that's like more recent, and that's when I actually invested in myself to go to grad school and get my master's. And for a very long time, I wasn't sure if that's something I wanted to do or if I needed to do. And when I graduated from college, my dad was like, you need to go be a doctor. And I was like, I don't want to be a doctor. He was like, you get your MBA. I was like, I don't want my MBA. And so I had gone back and forth for a long time where I had some mentors who were like, absolutely go get a master's. I had other mentors who were like, you don't need it, it's a waste of money. And so I was kind of just like stuck for a number of years trying to decide whether or not this is something that I needed or wanted. And then partway through the pandemic, we're all just like stuck at home. And by the way, I'm like that FOMO person, so I'm like, okay, well, this pandemic is a time where like I don't have to miss out. So if I'm gonna do like work in grad school, this is the time to do it. But I did want to make sure that I was like doing something for me. And so I actually didn't tell anyone in my life that I was applying, because I knew that either I'd have people giving opinions as to why I shouldn't do it, or people giving opinions as to like what school. I was like, I want to just like do this for me. And so I went and I, at that time, researched a lot of different schools and specifically looked at curriculum that aligned with like specific skills that I wanted to grow and build. So I found one specific program and it like had the different, I was like, I want to be that course and that course and that course. So I'm like, I'm going to apply. And if it doesn't work out, great, I'll look for other growth opportunities. If it does work out, great. And so it did work out. So I was super excited to get in, and then it started and I was like, oh, working in school is like, that's a lot. And that was fall 2021, which was like that great resignation was happening. And so that's also when a lot of our staff decided to go back into tech. So staff were transitioning, my hair was getting more gray, it doesn't look like it was getting more gray, like life was happening. And so there were days where I was like, what did I get into? Like, how did I think that this was gonna be possible? And the thing that I feel really grateful for, one is just the like tribe of people that were around me, between family and friends, who kind of goes back to what was just being said around accountability buddies and partners. Of when I was like, I don't know, like those late nights, like, you got this, we'll wake you up at 1 a.m. to finish that paper. Like, but that it's like something, even though it was a lot to be doing both, and to be leading a team and then rebuilding my team, then we had to do layoffs and rebuilding again, like, because it was a choice that I made for myself. For me, that was just like such a huge accomplishment. So I got to actually, you know, I officially walked at graduation last year, which was really special. But I think the piece that like really stands out to me that I do like to share is I also graduated debt-free. And so, and I share that piece because I think going into the process, that's something where like that was honestly one of the biggest barriers for me, trying to decide for so long whether I want to go. I was like, can I afford it? I don't think I can afford to not work on going to school. Like, is it possible? In between like merit scholarship, my own savings, and then actually negotiated when I got into my current role to also have my organization pay for some of that in ways that I just like didn't know was possible. And so that's one thing I would just share to folks, like if they are thinking about going and doing their degree and a master's, one, like make sure it actually makes sense for your career, right? I did it because the curriculum and content made sense for me and my learning. But two, like do whatever you can to like graduate debt-free. And there's so many options that I didn't realize existed until I talked to different mentors and others who helped me realize that that was possible.
Okay, so mine, I think the common theme is resilience. And you know, like as younger in my career, trying to think about like, you know, what I want to aspire to. I always knew I wanted to be a leader, but I didn't know exactly what that looked like. Like I didn't totally know that was like a COO sort of role, though it's a very good fit. And so my first experience with Startups, which was my previous one, we were actually incubated in a like multi-billion-dollar corporation, and then the ultimate goal was to like carve ourselves out of this, which is very hard to do. It's very hard to like, you know, have it be a divestiture that like private VCs want to invest in. And we were like in this do or die situation. I remember we like, you know, tried to raise money. We got a term sheet, which is commitment for funding, and then it fell through, which like is like sort of unheard of, but it fell through because we weren't a corporation, and you know, no one really wants to like fund a company that's being spun out of that versus one that's like found in someone's garage or in your room. And I remember thinking like, you know, we had like 3 months before our parent company was just gonna like cut off all the funds. And it was this like sort of do or die moment when you know, you just like, you just gotta make it happen. And I remember working with our CEO and our CTO, and we were like just pulling like sort of late hours, trying to figure out all the different combinations of what we could do. And we eventually did, but I just remember the magic of that moment, like of like building something and then having it almost like not work out, something you've like, you know, spent so much time, invested so much energy in, to like, you know, feel that it's like not gonna pan out, and then it does. And sort of like, you know, sort of the amount of camaraderie and relationship building we had with like the 3 or 4 of us who were really in the thick of it, I think I feel like after that time period and then the money landed in the bank, I'd never seen so many zeros because at that point I sort of, you know, I had access to the bank account and was monitoring it. I was just like, wow, we just did this, you know? And it was just a really proud moment to say like, things are not always gonna go well, but like, I think I can do this. And then I think I can sort of stick out the startup, you know, ride for a while, because it's quite tumultuous for the most part. And but I really enjoyed it in that. And so I sort of realized like the thing I was most proud of was also the thing I really enjoyed, which was sort of the chaos of everything. And it was just like this coming to understanding of like what it is that I wanted and sort of wanted to go after.
Thank you. So I'm going to open up for questions in a few minutes. And just a last question for all of you is, what is one tip or takeaway that people today can take, or even people watching on Zoom, that who want to be women leaders or women in the C-suite, or just achieve a goal, that so if you can each share like an implementable tip, and then how can people connect with you, or if there's your company's hiring, or there's something you want to offer, you're hosting something, whatever, anything that you want to share. So let's start with that.
I need to think.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, you just
I was so present in what you're saying, and now I'm like, oh wait.
Anyone can go. Yeah, whoever's it. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, I'm done.
I mentioned this a little bit in my intro, but it is just, like make it known to yourself and then others like what you're interested in. And I think people often feel like you should, or I, sometimes even I feel like that, like doing that is not genuine or authentic, but there's a way to do that, right? And so like I mentioned to my former boss who then recommended me for this role, but we were friends, and like, ultimately he became my sponsor because I helped him go build the part of the business that he needed to build, and through that we became really good friends. And I talked to him about what I wanted to do, and I think back along the journey, and I've not had a linear path, but honestly, when you're like a COO, you sort of do a little bit of everything to get, because the ultimate sort of role of a COO is to help where needed, to help move a company forward. And so you talked about this a little bit. I did a lot of networking. Like it wasn't necessarily like always to get the next job, but it was to help me craft my story or learn from others about what they were doing to help like incorporate that into what I wanted to do. And so then you talked about sort of being active on LinkedIn. I am, and I try to meet people too, like either through LinkedIn or an Iron-Chief together, and like really like just I find that the more I talk to folks, the better I learn about their stories, and the better I understand my story and how I want to message it. And I think it's just really important to sort of like, it's like a muscle you really need to build. It's not just like, oh, I'm looking, I've decided that tomorrow, that now I'm going to start looking for my next role, and all of a sudden like that switch turns on, like it's harder if you're not sort of like building it regularly, but there's ways to build it in your everyday life, right? Like even for me being on this panel and talking about my experiences, like is a part of building that. And so I think that's sort of one of the things I would recommend is just, sort of go after what you want, but like, do it in an organic, authentic way. And there's a lot of ways to do that. And then we actually have a second one, which is to own your own message. I think for a lot of the earlier part of my career, I think I depended on others to own my message for me. Right, I waited for others to sort of promote me or talk about me in a positive light, because I really thought it was like ingenuous to do it myself and promote myself, as you talked about. I probably really didn't start doing this until like the last 5 years. And so I think owning your message, because if you don't own it, then either no one owns it or someone's owning it, and probably not in the way that you want it to be.
Someone else is building your brand for you.
Yeah,
You don't build it yourself. Very well said.
I'm gonna echo both of those things so loud. Like, even recently, we had a big event and they read through bios, and I was like, like one of my partners like read my bio, and I was like, shoot, is that really my bio? And so I, like, my younger me would have been like, okay, that's my bio. And my now me was like, picked up the phone like 2 days later, let it sink in a little bit. And then it was like, hey, actually, like in preparation of our next event, let me give you my bio to read, because this is the things that I didn't like about it, and here are the things that I think we could do better so that it works better across the entire team. And it was received well, right? Like you don't have to be reactionary, but like, what the hell? It was like, hey, this is how we can all sound better. So I think like owning that brand 100% and like feeling like empowered enough to actually like speak for yourself. But the networking thing for me has just like completely changed my life in the way of not just networking for the point of like figuring out you, but I think actually Shelley talks about this in the book.
Everybody should go and get that book.
I know, seriously, if I could just get a referral on like every person.
I have the t-shirt.
What you get to?
I have the t-shirt.
Oh, wow, there's a t-shirt. We should have got like a little t-shirt giveaways. Yeah, so, but it's also about like this whole community that like women build, and it's true, like it's not even cliche. It's like you've got you like in the center, and there are older or experienced or whatever is ahead of you, women who are like willing to give you time and like appreciate every second of that and don't take that for granted, and ask them what you could do for them to help. But also looking backwards, there are women who want to be in the position you are in. Find them, bring them with you, like include them, because if you don't have women in front of you and behind you and like next to you, like you're moving as a pack. And I think like the women that I've created in like my community, I am so grateful for. They show up and they're authentic. And you know, the phone calls I was making last year about like, what am I supposed to do? Like, tell me everything that you've like done. And they're calling me like, how the heck did you do this? Like, you know, and they're asking me for advice. And it's this like cycle of we just have to show up for each other, and like, you don't have to be in the same workplace, industry, anything. Like, it's better to diversify that, because it's just sort of surprising like who you end up calling on in years from now, when you're just trying to figure out like what you need and have that support. So that is my advice. Just surround yourself with fierce women who are just gonna like be there for life, you know?
Like nurture relationships, don't wait till you want a job, right? Start building those and
Make time for coffee. Be
Yeah.
like, hey, let's have coffee and let's bring another friend, and then like
Love it.
10 minutes on Friday, you know what I mean? Like you can do it.
Alright, I would say, echoing what all of you have said, personal brand, networking and personal brand is very important. So if whatever you want to do, you have to start projecting it from today itself. So you want to so plan where you want to be in 1 year, in 5 years, 10 years, and then start projecting that today. So if I want to be in C-suite in 10 years or 5 years, I should start behaving like one today, and I should like to project that on LinkedIn, social media, network. Networking is extremely important, and sisterhood, I think, is very important. I think the kind of connections that have, and I'm also part of Chief group. So the sisterhood that I feel there, you know, when we are connecting, it's a completely different level. I'm also part of like a group called Extraordinary Women in Tech, and there also I've participated in conferences, the connections, and if I'm trying to meet somebody that I'm connected through these groups, it's so much easier than if you're just, you know, just want to connect with somebody. So building those relationships, you don't know what and who will help where, but just building those relationships is very important. And sisterhood, women supporting women is I think very, very powerful. I haven't seen men supporting each other the way women support. So I think it's very powerful and it's probably becoming with the history that, you know, women are not, there's such a big gap, and so we all who have come wherever we can help others, like you said, that are behind us, but there are always, you know, some very powerful role models in front of us that we like to emulate, and we get a lot of learnings from them. So it's always great. I think that's the way that you should plan for your
And I also want to add men supporting women, like, you know, and your husband, he's been here taking photographs, and then Chris is host. Chris knew this is a women's organization, and Stephanie spoke to him, and they opened up their doors to us. So I think it's you know, we also,
We cannot be successful without the support of, I think, two very important men in your life, your father and your husband. So for me, whoever I am today, it's because of my father, who passed away last year, but he told, since I was a little girl, he would tell me that I don't want you to have just a biological existence in this world. I want you to have a meaningful existence. So always there was no option for me to not be somebody. It was not a particular role that I wanted to be in C-suite or I wanted to do this, but definitely there was this image in my mind that I want to make an impact. And that was the relentless pursuit of that, you know, dream of, you know, making an impact is something that has helped me get where I am. So definitely men supporting women is very, very important.
right. And your dad got to see your success, so that's really good. That my dad too, because in India, I don't know if people are familiar, but very often they prefer the son to the daughter, and the son gets the best education, and the daughters take a backseat because, as you say, biological existence. The daughter is just, you know, nurtured and then prepared for marriage and to have kids, right? So my dad too was, I had just a brother and me, but my dad treated us equally, and he wanted me to be an engineer or doctor. I didn't do either, but you know, but he felt like women were equal to men, and the world is your oyster, and he always encouraged me to, you know, do whatever I wanted to. So he passed away 11 years ago, but I think, you know, men play such an important role, and the woman I am today is also, my dad played a huge role in that, and you know, my mom too. But I think it's this, I say, sisterhood or the larger community, our parents, our friends, the people we meet. It's just so powerful. And one of you said bringing women along with us, I think that's so important too, right? It's not just about you, but it's about, you know, how can we also impact other people, like you're doing with the moms are going back to work. I think being a leader is also about how can we influence and impact and inspire and mentor, so we can bring other people up with us. So thank you for sharing. Adanta, are you ready?
I'm ready. No, I mean, a lot of it's echoing what was shared, and maybe I'll give like two specific examples. Like one was around what we were talking about, like building your leadership tribe, right? Lifting while you climb, paying it forward, but like building this leadership tribe. And the other is, well, actually, let me start with that one because it has to do with Swati right here. So there's often that saying that's like, it's really lonely at the top. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I heard that all the time at different moments, but it wasn't until like I was there within an organization and there's decisions that are being made at specific tables that not everyone's gonna be able to know all the information. And you often have to hold certain information, which is really challenging. And so people might be disappointed with some of the decisions that happen. And so having a tribe of other leaders and specifically of other women to be able to confide in ways that you actually can't go to my direct report or other team members to share some of the challenges is like so critical. And so last year when we were going through some staff transitions due to a reduction with budget, I called Swati. And I think I was driving for like an hour in the car, and I was like, okay, so here's what's going on. And like for an hour, I just shared and asked for advice because she had just gone through some experience at her organization. And being able to have that connection and for me to know I'm not alone and to be able to like share the pieces that felt really difficult and challenging. And wow, this team member that I'm friends with, we now had to make this staff to member transition, and that like, how do I navigate through that? And hearing Swati talk about her experience was just so powerful. And so that's why I say this idea of like building a leadership tribe and having other, especially women, for us to be able to talk through some of those experiences, I think has just been so core for me in my journey. And the other is this idea around like networking, and the phrase I think about is don't be afraid to bother people. And so the example that I'm going to use actually is Gladys right here, which is so we all just came in through this front area. And, you know, we were all kind of chatting with a few folks, and Glass and I were talking, and then all of a sudden Glass was like, you're Dalton, you are at co-op, right? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, I went through the program. And I was like, wait, what? And we then immediately started talking, had this connection where we're going to follow up. We have a mutual connection. I think Glass could have easily known that about me, but not said anything, and kind of gone on like with the rest of the evening. But we have that engagement. Like, I hope that you actually follow up and we will be connected. But often people don't. Like, that's what I've noticed is the number of folks who like connect on LinkedIn, and certain people will say like, I'd love to get 15 minutes of your time. I say, great, here's my Calendly, or like how, and then like it's silence. I'm like, okay, I mean, it's fine. But in my head, I'm thinking like, don't be afraid. And then also, if you reach out to someone, they don't reply right away. Again, often people say, oh, well, they're just too busy, I don't want to bother them. Yeah, then follow up. Like, reach out 2 weeks later, reach out a month. Sometimes it's not that they're ignoring you, they are actually just really busy, but follow up if you want to get in front of them. And so I think by doing those two things, by building my leadership tribe from when I first started my career all the way to where I am today, I've had some incredible mentors, another woman like Megan was saying, who've like helped me lift. And I've also been able to, in my head, not think about, am I bothering those people? And so I'd reach out similarly on LinkedIn. And always send a message and share like, hey, I'd love to get 15 minutes of your time. And I recently, when I was actually switching from for-profit to nonprofit, I reached out to this woman in Atlanta who worked for TBS in like the CSR department, because I thought that's what I wanted to do one day. And she took 15 minutes of her time and talked to me, and was one of the people who inspired me to kind of switch my career. And like 10 years later, I recently reconnected with her on LinkedIn and found the message when I first reached out to her and was like, hi, I'm currently working in insurance, and right? But it's like, she took that time, and even when she initially didn't follow up, like I then kept following up because I wanted to reconnect. And so just don't be afraid to bother people, because often they actually want to engage, they just might not know, or they might have a lot going on, so just follow up. They're not trying to ignore you, there's so many other parties that might be coming their way. So those are the two things.
Yeah, that second one is great about not worrying about bothering people, unless it's not intentional. Like some people, they don't read your profile and they just want to sell you something. But when it's intentional and you tell people why you want the 15 minutes, I think they'll give it to you, right? So thank you, thanks for sharing that.
And I'll piggyback on that, just to add a LinkedIn tip if you're looking for it. There was like a webinar that I watched, and somebody was like, yeah, I actually really appreciate the person who not only just sent me a message, but would comment on my post. And like that's the way that they stayed active and engaged, as like, because you get so many messages, like sometimes I don't even look at my messages, because it's like, I know I don't want you to give me 20 leads per week, right? And then it's like, but I'm like, but then like on the comments, it's like, yeah, that's like a fewer engagements. And so for somebody to take the time to be like, wow, that was amazing, I'm like, oh wow, who's this? And then you click there, and so it's like one of those things that just find different ways to engage, like push to resistance, but from like all sides. Don't stalk anybody, but like like try to be creative in that like persistence.
And stand out. So you stand out from the crowd and they notice you, right? You get their attention. Awesome, this is wonderful. So we don't have too much time for questions, but there'll be time to network. So maybe 2 questions. Anyone have a burning question that they want to ask in public? Or 2, go ahead, Gladys.
I have one, and it's for Swati. Okay. It's related to what you mentioned around owning your message. How do you maybe if you can share just some strategies of how to do that effectively, especially with cross-functional partners. So in my role today, I work with a bunch of other teams, and given that visibility, they need to know the quality of my work. But because it's a startup, it moves really fast. And so like what was done a week ago probably isn't as important as the next week. And so I think because of that frequency, people just like tend to like not be up to date. And I just feel like it's never like the right time of like, oh, by the way, I worked on this, and this was like the outcome, or like just making it seem like I'm just bragging too much. So like if you had like any strategies or something that you've implemented.
So so to answer your question about the startup fast pace, right? Yes. And so I literally I've done so many different things, and I'm like, well, I can't just rattle these off to someone that I talk about, right? And so I have the rule of 3. I'm a consultant by background, and so I do all things in 3s. And so I basically was like, what are the 3 categories of work that I'm, responsible for? And so when I was when I was a startup at and I forget exactly what my title was at the time, but I had a strategy and operations team. I had a global strategy team, and then I had like a shared services team. And so you can imagine across all of those, like the strategy and operations team was doing everything from like M&A to business intelligence to like other corporate stuff. And the shared services was doing things like learning and development, and so it was just like all across the board. And there were probably like 15 or 20 things under each of those, and even I was getting overwhelmed like on a day-to-day basis. I was like, someone asked me like what my contributions were, what I did, like how would I even describe that? And so I created the 3 pillars, and then I started to put everything under one of those 3. I was like, everything I do has to fit under one of those. 2 didn't seem like enough, and 4 is definitely way too much, but 3 you can easily talk about. And then depending on who you're talking to, maybe you focus on one of those or 2 of those 3, and you don't have to again go through and list everything underneath. So we can talk offline too, like if you want to sort of go through what you're working on.
Do the 15 minutes coffee.
Yes.
Okay, one last question. Anyone else have? Go ahead.
For all of the women here who are aspiring to be like you in a C-level role, how did you go about cultivating your leadership style?
Maybe each one can, maybe very less than a minute. Each one give one very quick tip, no stories. Sorry, I want people to network at the end.
Just be authentic of who you are, and if you bring your authentic self, whatever are your values that you want your team or your so that's how I developed my style, if you say, of who I am, and I'm empathetic. I'm able to relate well with people. I am very communicative, so open conversations. All of those things became of who I am, and sort of that creates the culture for your team as well. So that's the style that it's like very organic.
Definitely authentic. I think there's a perception that you have to be this way to get to this point. And so I never thought I could be silly or like just sort of be myself. And then it just always felt awkward. And so like you have to be comfortable with you and like allow people to think what they want, but at the end of the day, just get the job done. And then you have the freedom to be able to like be whoever you want, like, and show up, right? Like there's like 2 sides, so your work side and then like your personality side on that. So don't shy away from like, people want to work with people that they like. So like show up and be who you are, so that way you can find the right team who's like a good fit that you want to show up with, you know, every day.
So for me, I realized that as I was like given more responsibility, or maybe I took it on myself, that the way to succeed was actually not to do all the work myself, but to hire really good people. And then hiring really good people entails like hiring them and then letting them go off and grow and do the work. And so my style, like after finding the right person, is for a team, is really to mentor them and be a thought partner to them, right? So sort of, you know, in our one-on-ones, really spend time like talking about like what needs to be done, sort of as peers almost, and have them like come back to me with, okay, this is what I put together. So I think that goes back to my comment about, at the end of the day, I think I definitely tried at points in my career. I was an engineer, and then I went to business school, and like I was supposed to be that type A personality. I tried to like shed the relationship piece because I was like, that is weakness, and I realized that is probably the most, you know, I think that's the thing that's led me to where I am today, is building the right relationships, and that's through like, you know, mentorship and partnership.
And what I'll share, so for me, I shared that I love learning, and so part of it initially was actually learning from other managers and leaders and taking aspects of leadership style that I really admired. So if I had a manager that I really liked how they led their one-to-one meetings, I would actually dissect like what is it about their one-to-one meetings that I appreciate, and how do I bring that to space? If I saw a leader present and I felt really drawn to how they present, I'd be like, what is it about how they like, took like intentional pauses and that like really drew in the audience, like, I talk really fast, what a right? But I actually like would learn from a lot of other leaders and bring in the pieces that I really loved. And then I would also think about the unique things that are for me. So I am like very silly, I tell very horrible jokes, and I also make my team do really fun, silly things. Like we recently did a Zoom photo as if for the Brady Bunch, and all of us were looking down and up and all the things. But like, I think those are two things. And then the last thing I'll share is, there's some of the assessments like Strength Finders and et cetera, while those are not like this, silver bullet or ball that's gonna tell you all the things. I think over the years, having taken some versions of those a number of times, I would start to think about, okay, what parts of that are true? Like includer is also one of mine that often comes up, or woo, I used to hate woo when I was like, what does that mean? But then I always start reflecting on what that means and how that shows up for myself, and then kind of leaning into those pieces and recognizing the strengths of those pieces, I think have helped me slowly figure out like my authentic voice and my authentic style. To be successful.
Wonderful, that's great. Do you have a question?
Or an announcement, I think. Very inspiring, and I think it's wonderful, and it reminds me very much of what we look for in new financial advisors. And we'd love to have more, diverse women and so forth and all that kind of thing. And so if anyone's thinking about our career or something like that, I'd love to talk to you. So give me a shout. If you apply everything everybody said tonight, I guarantee you'll knock it out of the park.
So I just want to thank all the four of you. That was amazing and so much value shared and insights and tips. And I think everyone here now is going to leave with all these, wonderful things to implement. Thank you to Chris and Stephanie for making this happen and providing us with the space and the food and everything. And thank you to all of you for joining us. We have about 15 minutes, we start at 8, 15 minutes to network, but connect with each other on LinkedIn so you can meet for coffee outside of this event, because I want you all to leave with a few connections.
And there's no hard stop, so you don't feel rushed. The other thing is, please feel free to also leave with as much food and drink.
Thank you. And I want to thank these young ladies who where's Navna?
Where's not,
The three of them. They're all students at Minerva University and have all volunteered their time today to help us set up.
Amazing.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think
That's not
it's probably evolving.
I know